Well, good afternoon and welcome to Live Impact News right here on 13 News Now Plus. It's 1:01 p.m. here on May 5th, 2026. It is Cinco de Mayo and it is a Tuesday afternoon. I'm Connor Reel. The People's producer, Nia Campbell, is here, and we are actually quite excited because it's not just Cinco de Mayo. It is also Give Local 757 Day. Today is the day. We've been talking about this on 13 News Now for some time, and it's for good reason. This is a massive day of giving here in the 757, and I mean massive as in to the tune of $812,199 raised so far. That, and there it goes. You see it go up as we're sitting here on the screen. Also, you just saw on your screen a QR code appear. That QR code is where you can donate if you're watching Live Impact News right now. Scan that QR code and it will take you right through the process. Any amount helps. You can also go, if you'd like, to www.givelocal757.org. That's givelocal, one word, all lowercase, 757 the numbers.org. givelocal757.org. And I think the most special and unique thing about this particular promotion here is that not only are you donating to 262 nonprofits, but they are nonprofits throughout this area right here. You are donating to people in Hampton Roads, those who work, live, and contribute to our communities. That is where these donations are going. They're going right back into the community that you serve and that serves you. And it's a wonderful initiative, I think, because of that as much as anything else. It's also fantastic because of the myriad of causes that this will benefit. You heard 262 nonprofits. I'm just going to go through a couple of these as we look to break $814,000 here in the next couple minutes. There it is, $814,000. Last year, we raised $1.5 million for Give Local. And the goal certainly is to break that record this year. Now, among other things, food banks, homeless shelters, literacy programs, after-school music, youth sports, animal services, wildlife rehab, environmental preservation, cancer research, mental health services, and veteran and military family services, all included in the 262 nonprofits that we are working with here today as a part of Give Local 757 Day. So many causes that you could possibly want to contribute to. All of those causes impacting those in need right here in Hampton Roads. And if you'd like to be a part of it, we would greatly appreciate it. Now, look, we also completely understand that not everything is easy right now when it comes to the economy. We know, we report just about daily on the issues at the gas pump and the issues in a variety of other industries. We completely and totally understand, and we want to make sure we acknowledge that fact. It is not an easy time for everybody right now. It's a difficult time for so many. It's just, if you're able to, if you're in a place where you can donate, we would greatly appreciate it. If not, we understand and we appreciate you watching. And if you'd like to donate again, we're now over $821,000, almost to $822,000. And we've had 8,047 donations to make up that amount. So we stand here in just an enormous amount of gratitude for everyone who has donated, everyone who watches, and everyone who supports us and all of the initiatives that we're trying to work with here today. Give Local 757 Day has arrived, and we'll be talking about this throughout the stream. We'll revisit that number. We'll see if maybe there's a chance we get over 1 million during the stream here. But that will be one of our main focuses today. Now, we have plenty of other stories that we want to get to, including a live event happening at the White House right now. Earlier today, President Trump spoke at the Oval Office, surrounded by members of his cabinet, including Linda McMahon and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but also a number of professional athletes, Bryson DeChambeau, Todd Golden, the head coach for University of Florida basketball, Gary Player, the legendary golfer, Noah Syndergaard, the former MLB pitcher, TJ Oshie from the Washington Capitals, all at the Oval Office today for the proclamation of the reinstitution of the presidential fitness test. I certainly remember taking that when I was a kid. It went away for some time. President Trump reinstituting that presidential fitness test. That was announced today, and there were also a bunch of kids at the White House, as you can see, who are now outside hanging out on the lawn. That's Bryson DeChambeau with the hat there, President Trump. Todd Golden, the University of Florida coach, towards the front in the blue long sleeve. Gary Player in the back with the black hat. So why don't we listen in live, see if we can hear anything. Pull-ups, of course, a part of that presidential fitness test. And it looks like the kids are participating in some of the events that will challenge school-age kids around the country after the signing of this proclamation. Let's listen in. It looks like Bryson DeChambeau is about to do some pull-ups right now. Let's see how many he can get here. Let's see if we can hear anything on this volume 9. All right, as you can hear, it's a celebration out there. And look, Bryson DeChambeau is just about to have his last pull-up. He might have the longest drive on tour right now. Well, he's playing in the Live Tour for the time being, but he has one of the longest drives in golf, I should say. Bryson DeChambeau, maybe you can see why, as he got some of those pull-ups in with ease right there, and now meeting with the kids. So that is an event happening at the White House today. If we have time throughout our stream, we may actually listen to some of the comment from the Oval Office earlier. President Trump also spent a great deal of time talking about the war in Iran during that event. So perhaps we'll have time to go and listen into that. Now, for us here at this hour, at the top of the show, we're actually going to take a break because we have a special guest early in the show today, right nearly off the top of the show here. David Pollack, if you're a football fan, especially if you're a college football fan, the name is likely familiar to you. A former star for the Georgia Bulldogs, an NFL player, a college football analyst. He'll be here joining us after this break to talk about an initiative that he is working with to try to save lives and improve health here. So we'll be right back with David Pollack after this break. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News right here on 13 News Now Plus. We have a special guest joining us here for this next segment. Typically, you may see his face on television talking about college football, or maybe a little bit back in the day, playing on an NFL field or in Athens, Georgia for the Georgia Bulldogs. But today, David Pollock joins us actually talking about a far more important initiative that he is working with. A lot of Americans will delay routine checkups, screenings, and cancer screenings. It's something we report on here at 13 News Now. It's something that has impacted David Pollock's life directly. I'll say, first of all, David, it's wonderful to meet you. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Connor, and I want to start by asking, this is a very personal issue for you. Can you tell us how the last few months have been for you and your family?
Well, thank you for joining. Thank you for having me, Connor. It's personal because about a year and a half ago, we found out my wife has brain cancer, and when you hear that, obviously things change. And I think it was important for us as a family to come together, and it was important for us to understand God uses every circumstance for good. So we've walked through this journey, man. And man, how much do you learn, Connor, about cancer? How much do you learn about the different types of brain tumors and the different people that are going through different struggles? And so to watch her struggle and my family with my 17 and 15-year-old, we've had to learn a lot of new things. We've had a lot of celebrations, like right there on the screen, where she gets to celebrate walking and moving and doing things that she wasn't able to do for a while. But we're extremely thankful to people like Aflac and other places, man, that have raised money and raised awareness for people like us that got to benefit from it. And we get to get healing from it and drugs from it that have been so beneficial, and information, obviously, that's helped us all.
Yeah, and David, first of all, our deepest condolences for everything that you and your family, and especially your wife, is going through. Our thoughts with you guys for this interview and beyond as you continue on this journey. When it comes to, you could have gone a number of different directions with kind of taking initiative to act on what you guys have been dealing with, and you've put a real focus on preventative care and early screenings. Why that particular topic that you focused on so heavily?
Because me and you might be having a different conversation right now, Connor, if we didn't. My wife had this ear pain, and instead of leaving it alone and waiting till it got really, really bad and it led to headaches and seizures, which is commonplace for brain tumors, we went and we got a scan. And when she got a scan, she realized she had a mass, in her head. And then we monitored that for a couple of years. And then it was 3 years, it was 4 years later where we found out that it actually grown from the last appointment. And then we realized it was cancerous. So by doing that, man, it was so huge. We got to understand exactly what we were dealing with because we were monitoring and we knew about the growth. So listen, don't wait. Make time for your cancer screenings. Get your checkups. It matters, man. And I know you're busy. I know there's things that are going on, but these are important moments. You get one body. So let's make sure we make some time, even though we're all busy with our busy schedules.
And as you mentioned, David is here with Aflac's Check for Cancer initiative. May 5th, it is May. It's Brain Tumor Awareness Month here. David, I want to ask, for people who are watching and they just don't know where to start. They're like, yeah, I would definitely like to do that. That sounds like a smart thing to do, but I don't even know where to begin. What would you suggest?
Well, Connor, we didn't either. And we didn't, I tell you this, we didn't know it was brain cancer, awareness or brain cancer month, in May a year and a half ago, right? We didn't know a lot about it, but now Aflac is making this very, very easy for all of us to understand where to go. And you can go to aflac.com, /check for cancer, and you can get all of the details. It's very, very simple. If you see a check, you can get checked out. Right. And you can understand exactly what you're dealing with, where you can go, learn more, and take action. That's the biggest thing, Connor. Take action, make some time to do your research, to do some studies, because the numbers are crazy when you find it faster, and people's lives that are changed every year that didn't even know they had something. It changed their lives, and it changed their lives for the better.
And that's, again, aflac.com /check for cancer. And they make the process easy for you, because I know that that's something I've talked to friends. We're starting to get into that age where we definitely need to pay attention to this. And a lot of guys just don't know where to begin. Aflac and Mr. Pollock making it easy for us. David, I know this is such a simple question, but it's a loaded question as well. How are you doing with everything? I know it's a long journey and there's more journey to go. You, your kids, your wife, how are you guys doing?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because that kind of depends on the day, right, Connor? Some days are are better than others. But one thing you realize through this, man, like we have been given this, and my wife puts it best, actually. She was like, I think God chose me because he knew I could handle it. And I'm like, man, I wish he would have chose someone else. But when you watch your spouse struggle, like, it's not easy, it's not fun, and some days are really, really difficult. But man, for us, it's sticky notes all over the place, it's scripture all over the place, understanding that we're not in control, understanding that hard times come. And those hard times, man, they really make you appreciate the good times. And we've had a lot of good times the last 6-7 months, and we're thankful for them. But that's also why we want to continue to share the message. People get checked out. When you find it early, it makes such a big difference. But we're thankful to team up with Aflac, and we're thankful to be where we're at on our journey. And we still got more learning, and we know what cancer can do because it can come back, right? Like, it's an aggressive disease that affects a lot of people. And it don't discriminate, Connor. You know that too. Young, middle-aged, old, like it finds a lot of people that we care about and we love.
Yeah, and it's so easy to think it won't happen to you, but you will never regret going and getting things checked early. And so, David, we appreciate you being here with us. We couldn't have David Pollock on without asking you a college football question or two. We know what you're doing now is far more important, but we want to sneak one in. We're here in Hampton Roads, Virginia, Virginia Tech University, a college football power here for decades and decades. They've had a bit of a tough stretch, so they bring in James Franklin, a big name hire. What do you expect to see early in this Franklin tenure for the Hokies?
Man, James Franklin, obviously, the way it ended at Penn State wasn't great, but the way he built a team at Vanderbilt was incredible. And the way he built it at Penn State when he started there, especially with what they were dealing with, I expect to come in. I expect him to reinvigorate the fan base. The commitment's been amazing. Watching the money behind it and the support behind the university. This is a university, that stadium rocks. They know exactly how good football is, and James Franklin's going to be the guy to bring some more juice back to that.
That Enter Sandman it's a built-in advantage running out that tunnel on a Thursday night. And then across the state, UVA, you speak of a financial investment. They have really grown in that regard. Made it to the ACC title game last year. Tony Elliott at the helm there, starting to see some success. It's been a long time since they were consistently relevant in college football. Do you see UVA achieving that relevance, and how come?
You're exactly right. They made a commitment. They made an investment in the program. You got to spend money to go get players nowadays. But Tony Elliott also given time, right? Like, given the full 4 years, a lot of people want to fire people after one bad year or 2 bad years. Now you start to see Virginia trending back up the other direction. It was so good to see them last year to have success. This year, obviously, can they do it again? Can they put 2 really, really good years together? Disappointing finish, but remember all those dubs last year. Close wins, pulling them out, doing a great job.
And then, of course, your Georgia Bulldogs have been the dominant program of the 2020s, but they haven't yet made it through this expanded football playoff. Gunnar Stockton coming back with a lot of experience now. Are the Bulldogs going to finally get a ring from this 12-team playoff? The 14 playoff was all theirs. What do we see from Kirby Smart and the guys this year?
They have. In the last 2 years, they won the SEC, and everybody bragged about that when I was growing up. That's all they talked about. But now it don't matter, right? Because there's 12 in the field, and winning the conference isn't as big of a deal as it used to. All we've seen from conference winners is they're 1-7, off of buys. So it's not necessarily the greatest thing, but Gunnar Stockton come back with a lot of experience, a lot of guys around him. This isn't a young team like last year. This is a very experienced team with a lot of veteran leadership, a lot of playmaking, and that's why Georgia's one of the favorites to win the national championship.
David Pollock, it's a pleasure to get to talk to you. I kind of miss the days when conference titles mattered a little bit more already. We appreciate you coming on and chatting with us. Aflac.com/check-for-cancer. David, the best of luck. Our thoughts and prayers with you and yours.
Thank you, Connor.
All right, that's David Pollock again, a star at the University of Georgia, an NFL football player, a college football analyst, and now taking on a challenge that will have a far greater impact than anything anyone could do on a football field or in an athletic competition. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And, of course, May, Brain Tumor Awareness Month. So we'll continue to make sure that we raise that awareness here on Live Impact News. Now, for the time being, we are going to take a commercial break. When we get back, the live event at the White House has ended. We don't currently have any live events happening as we speak. That'll give us some time to go back over some of the main stories of today. And we're also going to check in on that Give Local 757 number when we return. Welcome back to Live Impact News here on 13 News Now Plus. As always, 1:24 p.m. And just one more time, it's just a huge thanks to David Pollock for coming on, talking to us about a really important initiative that he is undertaking with AFLAC and being kind enough to answer a couple college football questions for us as well. Now, let's get back to the initiative that we're focused on here in Hampton Roads today. Give Local 757. $847,828 raised so far. And you can donate now using the QR code on your screen. It looks like we might get to $848,000 while we are giving this update here. And again, this is 262 nonprofits that will be receiving these donations. But here's the thing. These aren't just any nonprofits. These are nonprofits here in this area, in the 757. These are nonprofits that operate 848,000. There we go. These are nonprofits that operate within the communities in which we all live. This is a direct investment into your city, your town, and your community. And we think that that's really special. And we hope that you do too. And we hope that if you're in a place in your life right now where you can afford to donate, that you consider doing so. We greatly appreciate everybody going with us on this ride. We know this is atypical from what Live Impact News would usually be, and that we kind of have this constant dropping in and these updates, and we hope that you can enjoy having this slightly different Tuesday with us, because we certainly enjoy the opportunity to give back, right? And we do believe that there are some really, really critical initiatives and organizations that will truly make use of this money in a way that is good for all of us here in the 757, and is especially critical for those who need that help the absolute most. So if you're able to, please donate. We completely and totally understand anyone who's not in that position right now, and we appreciate you watching and hanging with us today as we go through this. Again, that QR code on your screen. Let's see here. We might even get up to 849,000 while we're on the air. And Naya, if you put me on the screen, I've been really working hard on my ability to point directly at the QR code. This has been a massive thing for me so far. So we're going to point right at it. Right there. That QR code right there. What do you think, Naya? Naya's looking at me like you're making an absolute fool of yourself right now. But it's this. It's this QR code right here. Right here. Right there. Nope. Yeah, close enough. Close enough. Naya, what do you think? Was that
perfect
as entertaining as I had hoped it would be? That is the QR. Here, I'll look right at it. That's the QR code right there that you're going to want to use to donate if you possibly can. Again, we just appreciate everyone watching. We appreciate everyone going on this ride with us. We appreciate everyone supporting us, even as we take the time to continuously try and make these initiatives happen. We're up over 850,000 now when it comes to donations today. Again, last year, 1.5 million. We would love to be able to break that record this year. And every single bit of contribution goes directly to those 262 nonprofits. And we're proud to be able to try and help in any small way that we can. We're proud of each and every one of you who have decided to just join us here on Live Impact News at all, much less donate. So that is Give Local Day 757. We'll be back in maybe half an hour or so with another update on that total. For the time being, let's bring on the People's Producer, Naya Campbell. Naya, I see that we have some options here for maybe where we want to spend a little bit of our coverage time. I want to go to you and ask, are we ready for a break? And do we want to go to this morning's press conference if not?
Before we go to a break, I was actually thinking about running one of our packages from one of the nonprofits.
That's a great idea.
Local 757. Do you
Absolutely.
Want to do that? Okay.
Would you like to introduce it?
This is Norfolk Casa. I have not yet watched the package.
Okay. Let's do it.
Judges are making critical decisions for children they may never meet. This is where Norfolk CASA volunteers get involved.
We, as volunteers, come to each court hearing with recommendations for the judge so that the judge can have the information that they need.
Volunteer Samantha Cutshall says CASA, short for Court-Appointed Special Advocates, trains community members to step into complex juvenile and domestic relations court cases tied to abuse or neglect. Once assigned by a judge, they check in on children at least once a month, talk to their teachers, caregivers, and therapists, and report back to the court with updates and recommendations in the child's best interest.
Our job really isn't to pry or to talk about any of whatever traumatic situation that they may have been through. It's to just be there for them.
Samantha's husband and fellow volunteer, Alex Cutshall, says for many of these children, one reliable adult can help stabilize their lives. Volunteers stay with the child through moves between homes and schools, court dates, and uncertain times.
We are the one consistent party that is able to be there for them throughout this entire situation.
Norfolk CASA says children with the CASA volunteer are less likely to return to foster care and more likely to find a safe, permanent home and do better in school. But the nonprofit also notes more than 45,000 Virginia children are reported to social services each year for suspected abuse or neglect. And right now, the need for advocates is outpacing the number available.
We want these children to be not just a name in black and white on a piece of paper that the judge is making big life decisions about, but a real little person,
Heard.
Right, and we want their voice to be heard.
As Norfolk CASA marks 40 years, their mission remains working to ensure each child has someone in their corner.
Every kid going through this kind of situation should have a CASA.
So a direct look there at one of those nonprofits, one of those 262 nonprofits that will be benefiting directly from today's Day of Giving, Give Local 757 Day. Okay, we're going to take a brief commercial break. When we get back, we'll have coverage of some major headlines from today and from the past 24 hours or so. Stay with us. Okay, back here in the studio, let's give a brief update on the war in Iran after such an active day in that regard yesterday. Now, we heard from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and Joint Chiefs of Staff, Joint Chiefs Chairman Dan Kane this morning at the Pentagon. We are actually going to pick it up where the question and answer portion of their press conference begins. We heard both of their speeches we heard Pete Hegseth's speech in its entirety and a good portion of Dan Kane's this morning on Live Impact News. So we're actually going to pick this up when they open it up to the press. We'll give a couple updates here. We do know that Dan Kane said that Iran's recent acts of aggression are below the threshold of, quote, major combat operations. So that would mean that Tehran, as far as the Trump administration is concerned, has not violated the ceasefire because their actions have not gone above that threshold of major combat operations. General Kane said that since the ceasefire was announced, Iran has fired at commercial vessels 9 times, seized 2 container ships, and attacked U.S. forces more than 10 times, all below the threshold of restarting major combat operations at this point. Now, the Americans are attempting to end Iran's stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz by creating a security area where ships can safely pass through with the protection of the United States. That is yet to be seen how effective that will be and how used it will be. Meanwhile, the United Arab Emirates is actively engaging with missile and drone attacks from Iran, reported both yesterday and on Tuesday. So that is another layer of this that remains to be seen how it will bear out when it comes to the fragile ceasefire. Let's go out to Dan Kane and Pete Hegseth answering questions at the Pentagon earlier today.
Go over to you.
Very good. We'll take a few questions. Go ahead.
Thank you. Alexandra Ingersoll, One America News. Mr. Secretary, do you assess what's left of this small boat fleet to be a significant threat or a nuisance to be managed? And then secondly, what is your message to critics who say that the U.S. doesn't have a strategy in this mission?
Well, any threat needs to be taken seriously. And just like those 6 attack boats that the chairman mentioned were taken seriously and dealt with before there were any real threat to the American military vessels that they were approaching. And that is small craft like that are all that Iran has left. Their ability to get close with a destroyer of the capabilities that we have is limited, but we're going to take it very seriously and kinetically, quickly. We're not going to allow a threat to gather. And I can tell you, even from just this morning, the strategy remains laser focused. In fact, what I think you see from Project Freedom is that we're not allowing ourselves to get distracted. This is a separate and distinct effort, temporary in nature, that we plan to hand over to the world. The world has expressed a desire to be a part of this, as is often the case, or maybe almost always the case. American leadership is required. So the president was willing to undertake this, send commercial ships through, send destroyers in, provide this red, white, and blue bubble of protection, and encourage the world to step up. Because ultimately, this waterway is, as I said, far more crucial to the rest of the world, and they need to have the ability to defend it. So I think this is a reflection of a laser-focused strategy, actually, right here.
Morning, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chairman. David Zia, Real America's Voice. I wanted to ask you of any of the fast boats that have been either sunk or identified, are there any armaments larger than, say, small, AK-47 type stuff, or any anti-ship cruise missiles identified? And my second question is, if there's a divide between the IRGC and Tehran, is there a way to get Tehran to agree to let us go after the IRGC that is doing these attacks without violating the ceasefire?
Well, right now, anything coming at our crafts, regardless of what's on it, has to be defended against, and that's the case. I don't know what the exact armaments were on those fast boats.
Small arms, nothing significant on the fast boats.
Rifles or small machine guns. There were some small coastal cruise missiles shot down as well. So there's some frothiness in the beginning aspects of this that were dealt with very directly by our destroyers, and we're communicating both overtly and quietly to the Iranians to allow this defensive operation to happen on behalf of the world. There are some actions the IRGC takes sometimes that are outside the bounds of what maybe Iranian negotiators would like. That's their job to rein that in and ultimately create a condition for a deal, right? That's not something I talked about in these remarks, but that's happening in real time. Iran has an ability to make that deal. But what we're demonstrating with Project Freedom is they don't control the strait. I mean, we know Iran is embarrassed by the fact that our blockade is holding, and we can run ships through, and we're going to help the world run ships through. And if they hold it at issue, the whole world knows who's doing it. It's not us. We're willing to open it up. It's Iran, and that creates a dilemma for them. We hope they make a deal. Yes.
Thank you, sir. My first question is for General Kane. Mary Margaret with the Daily Wire. You said that the attacks by Iran so far are below the threshold of restarting major combat operations. What is that threshold? And then for Secretary Hegseth, are there still concerns about mines in the Strait? And can you kind of clarify these reports of kamikaze dolphins that we've heard about?
I haven't heard the kamikaze dolphin thing. It's like sharks with laser beams, right? The threshold of restarting is a political decision above my pay grade. What I'll say is it's low harassing fire right now. It feels like Iran is grasping at straws to try to do something across the southern flank. To your question, David, their command and control structure remains very fractured, and I think they're struggling to maintain control down echelon at the edge, but it's still pretty low-level kinetics at this point in time.
And I can't confirm or deny whether we have kamikaze dolphins, but I can confirm they don't. Ultimately, any follow-on effort, if there are mines identified, would be something that some of our units could undertake or the world could undertake. But right now we know we have a lane of safe passage that commercial shipping can flow through.
Thank you, Secretary Hegseth. Last 24 hours or so, Iran's fired at us, we fired at Iran. Just going to ask you more directly, is the ceasefire over?
No, the ceasefire is not over. Ultimately, this is a separate and distinct project, and we expected there would be some churn at the beginning, which happened. And we said we would defend and defend aggressively, and we absolutely have. Iran knows that. And ultimately, the president's going to make a decision whether anything were to escalate into a violation of a ceasefire. But certainly we would urge Iran to be prudent in the actions that they take to keep that underneath this threshold. This is about the straits. This is about freedom of navigation. This is about international waterways. This is about free flow of commerce, all the things that happened before, and only Iran is contesting. So right now the ceasefire certainly holds, but we're going to be watching very, very closely. Absolutely.
Secretary
James, go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, thank you. General, thank you. I want to first express my gratitude and admiration for the work you do and for everyone involved in our armed forces, and also for the accomplishments of Operation Epic Fury, which I think are too often dismissed too lightly. But those accomplishments don't obscure, I think, a central default that has occurred here, and I would like you both to address it. On the first day of this conflict, President Trump addressed the Iranian people directly and said, when we're finished, take over your government. It'll be yours to take. And then on the seventh day of the conflict, in a Truth Social post, the president said, quote, there will be no deal with Iran except, all caps, exclamation mark, unconditional surrender. What happens to that pledge to the Iranians? And when did the president decide to capitulate on his demand for unconditional surrender?
Well, James, I wouldn't, you started out nicely, but you ended exactly where we knew you would end. The president hasn't capitulated on anything. He holds the cards, we maintain the upper hand, and Project Freedom only strengthens that hand. And so he will ensure that whatever deal is made or whatever end state is reached creates ensuring that Iran never has a nuclear weapon, which is number one, and he's been focused on that, and the deal and discussions are centered on that. And what the Iranian people take advantage of after the fact is up to them, and he's been very clear about that. And maybe you do it now, maybe it happens later, but ultimately he's also been clear, we're not going to entangle this into some nation-building project. Our objectives are clear. They've been pursued from day one. Hopefully the Iranian people take advantage of that because they're being taken advantage of by this regime. As you know, 45,000 Iranians, innocent Iranians, killed before the outset of this. That's what this government does, kills their own innocent civilians. getting out from underneath that is going to be a challenge of the Iranian people, and we certainly hope they take advantage of that. Thank you. Actually, right there.
Could I
Thank
have
you.
one follow, please?
No, go
if
ahead.
I may.
Everybody else
One follow.
follows directives. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Can you share any information regarding the South Korean ship that was reportedly hit by Iran? Is Seoul in contact with the U.S. military about it? And is there any indication that they would heed Trump's call made on social media to join Project Freedom?
We hope so. We're in contact with that ship, CENTCOM, I should say, and the Maritime Coordination Forces are in touch. And I think targeting like that is a reflection of the indiscriminate nature of what Iran is doing. We hope South Korea would step up, just like we hope Japan would step up, just like we hope Australia would step up, just like we hope Europe steps up. But we're not waiting for them to do so. We're looking to set the conditions to hand to them. But the president was clear in his truth message that, hey, this is your ship. You should take part in helping to defend it. We very much hope they do. James, go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, in terms of new U.S. intelligence reports suggest that the timeline for the war in Iran to get a nuclear weapon has not changed since last summer, still at 9 to 12 months. Is that intelligence wrong? How can this be after so much bombing? And for General Kane, going on back onto what you're talking about, the Strait of Hormuz, the president recently said that the blockade is even more effective than bombing. So why didn't we start the campaign with the blockade? And initially, how many planned ships do you plan to escort or take through commercial ships to the Strait of Hormuz today or in the coming days?
Well, we don't discuss the specifics about intel, and anybody that does shouldn't be, and I can't confirm or deny whether that is indeed correct. Speculation, as far as I'm concerned, coming from you. But ultimately, what Operation Midnight Hammer did in the obliteration of those facilities was set back their program. And then, because of the efforts of that 12-day war, the president was able to recognize that this threat, while they continued to seek nuclear capabilities, their will was still there to seek a nuclear bomb. Ultimately, they were creating a conventional umbrella of so many missiles and so many capabilities that no one would want to challenge them. Think of the North Korea. This is the North Korea strategy. We have so many conventional capabilities, you won't do something about it, and underneath that, we're going to develop more nuclear capabilities. So the will was still there. President Trump had the courage to say we have to dismantle and take on those conventional capabilities while the nuclear facilities are watched 24/7 and overwatched, and we will ensure one way or another, hopefully Iran chooses a deal, that they give up those ambitions, give up those capabilities, and we're able to confirm that every step of the way. So that has been, President Trump's been focused on it. He's set them back like no other president. He ripped up the terrible deal that would have given them a bomb. He took care of it in Midnight Hammer. We're watching it right now, and ultimately feel good about the fact that the end state will ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon. Go ahead.
Sir, I'll let CENTCOM talk to the number of ships they're going to take through because they're the nearest ones to talking to the commercial shippers, and I don't want to get out in front of them. On the order and sequence around the military objectives, that's a decision the President and the Secretary go get us at, and at the time we were focused on the primary objectives that were in front of us. Thank you.
Ryan Morgan with the Epic Times. On Friday, President Trump notified Congress that the hostilities that began on February 28 had terminated. That came on the deadline of the 60-day war powers deadline. Will this administration be seeking congressional approval for any further military operations if the ceasefire breaks down?
Our view is the one you described, that ultimately with the ceasefire, the clock stops. If it were to restart, that would be the president's decision. That option is always there, and Iran knows that, and that's why, their choices in Project Freedom are important. The president retains the opportunity and the capabilities, more capabilities than we had at the start of this, to restart major combat operations if necessary. If Iran is not willing to follow through on its side of the bargain or make a deal, then the War Department is postured, locked, loaded, and ready to go. We hope it doesn't have to go in that direction. But Admiral Cooper and our forces are in a three-point stance and ready to go. Yeah, last question.
Thank you. Liam Cosgrove with Zero Hedge. In recent weeks, both Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel's head of Mossad have stated their intent not to cease combat with the Iranians. Netanyahu put this on Twitter. Israel's head of Mossad said Israel's goals are not finished until the Iranian government collapses. And so they're referring to the government that President Trump has brokered a ceasefire with and is working on a lasting peace in the region with. And so that's something many Americans, especially American farmers, are hoping he does get to a lasting peace. And So if President Trump is successful in that and the Israelis are explicitly stating their intent to continue fighting at a later date, how can you ensure America doesn't get roped back into a war if that comes? And secondly, with Netanyahu comfortable tweeting something like that out, and also Netanyahu has continued bombing Lebanon despite President Trump
I would
explicitly
say your
telling him not
question is
to.
based on the false premise that somehow President Trump is being pulled in by Prime Minister Netanyahu to any of these actions. And that's where you're going. Just to be clear, President Trump has led at every step of this based on his view of American interest and America first. And we're grateful that Israelis have been very capable partners at many steps of this. And they may have some objectives at times that are slightly different than ours. But there's only one hand on the wheel ultimately directing this, whether it's Project Freedom or previously Operation Epic Fury, and it's President Trump. So we're grateful for their input, their insights, the existential nature of the threat they face from an Iranian bomb, the capabilities that they can bring to that, but ultimately the coordination will happen with the leadership of President Trump. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, there you have it. Questions and answers from Secretary of Defense Hegseth and General Dan Kane, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So, Joint Chiefs of Staff Chair. Okay, we're going to take a commercial break here after getting that update on the war in Iran. Operation Freedom, obviously that new initiative to try and safely get vessels through that Strait of Hormuz, which has been shut down for the most part since this war began, which is a major contributor to the global economic issues that we're seeing as a result of this war. So, updates to come on how Operation Freedom works. Okay, for the time being, we're going to take a commercial break. When we get back, Project Freedom. When we get back, we will have a forecast from meteorologist Evan Stewart as we get ready to hopefully, maybe, possibly see a little bit of rain here at the start of May. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Live Impact News. We're here with meteorologist Evan Stewart. Evan, welcome to the studio. Thank you for joining us. Now, of course, Evan, it's Give Local 757 Day.
That's right.
We've got that donate button right there on your screen. You can scan that QR code to donate. And while we have Evan here, Naya, can we get a look at that total that we've been monitoring?
Last I saw, we were at close to 900.
Close to 900.
863,
$863,000. 863,929 to be exact. And we're hoping to see, there it goes, shooting right up as we stand here. I'm thinking 900 by the 2 o'clock hour. You know, I was hoping we'd get to 1 million while we were here on Live Impact News to do a little celebration. But regardless of where we go from here, having $868,000 donated by any of our viewers and all of our viewers is really, really wonderful. And we greatly appreciate it. And we hope to keep going from here, give back to those charities. You've been doing Give Local 757 for some time. I mean, what an event.
Yeah, it is. I think last year was 1.5 million?
$1.5 million last year, yeah.
And, you know, a lot of the organizations, they have matching, you know, so even if you know, and I know times are tight, so, you know, even if you can't give much, you know, with the matching donations coming in somewhere 2 and 3 times, you know, that really helps your money go a long ways.
Absolutely, absolutely. We'll continue to touch on that and keep you updated on those totals as we go. Now, for the time being, we've got some weather that we need to discuss.
We do. Absolutely beautiful, as you can see behind me here. Lots of blue skies across Hampton Roads. This is our camera at the Chamberlain. They're up in Hampton. So again, looking nice. And we've seen a lot of sunshine through the day today, and we will into this afternoon. Temperatures up into the low to mid 80s. But we are tracking some rain with a system that is out towards the west. So satellite and radar, again, lots of sunshine out there right now. Notice some of those high wispy clouds starting to move in from the west. That's in advance of our next storm system. And it's sort of a larger system, you know, something we haven't seen a lot of, certainly in the month of April when we had all the dry weather. And there are a couple of fronts in there that we're watching that are going to move through. The main front will hold off until Thursday, but we could even see a couple of showers here into Hampton Roads into the day tomorrow as well. Just a couple of light showers. We're not looking at much into the day tomorrow. So through this evening, temperatures in the 70s. Nice and clear, and then we'll start to see those clouds rolling in as we head into the day on Wednesday. So starting out in the 60s, increasing clouds through the day, and notice a chance at a few light showers. It's not going to be a lot of rain into the day tomorrow, just a quick little shower. Might even be one of those situations where it doesn't even, you know, get the ground wet in some spots. Temperatures up around 80 degrees. The better chance for the rain comes in Wednesday night into Thursday, and this is the latest run of Futurecast that has come in. And notice as we get into Thursday morning, looking at some light showers around. Could be a little bit of a heavier shower from time to time into the afternoon and the evening. So some much needed off and on rain. It's not going to bust the drought. You know, that is going to take months probably to, you know, really alleviate the drought situation. We were looking at some experimental products that were saying even into the next 6 months, only about a 10 to 15% chance that we'll be out of the drought in 6 months. So not great for the dry conditions. As far as rainfall amounts through Thursday, generally a ½ inch. There might be a few spots that get closer to an inch if we get a heavier downpour. So not a tremendous amount of rain, but certainly every little bit of rain is appreciated. And I know, you know, with the dry conditions, everybody would like that. So pretty much over the next several days, we're just looking at, you know, warm this afternoon, temperatures up into the low to mid 80s, 81 tomorrow with a few isolated showers, and then scattered showers into the day on Thursday, cool on Friday, and then into Mother's Day weekend, 76 Saturday, 79 Sunday, with lots of sunshine and another good shot at some rain, hopefully as we get into Monday. But Mother's Day, looking very nice.
And we've got that really nice mixture of still some great temperatures, still very enjoyable climate, but we might finally get some relief on that drought situation. And then, of course, that Mother's Day, just looking beautiful, 79 and sunny. It's the only column without a cloud in it.
I know.
So it's going to be perfect.
Pretty
That's
nice.
awesome.
And, you know, we're already up to 83 degrees in Norfolk. We've got that southwest wind coming in at 20 miles per hour, so that's warming things up for us. Already up to 83 in Newport News and Williamsburg. So a very pleasant afternoon.
Beautiful. Love it. Great time for an outside walk. If you need a little break from work, if you happen to have the day off, if you don't go in till later, maybe get outside and spend some time in the sunshine. Now, does this also come with an elevated UV risk here?
UV risk is certainly higher. You know, the sun's getting higher in the atmosphere. that sun angle. So yeah, we are looking at those higher UV index numbers. So if you are outside, going to the beach or anything like that, you still definitely need that sunscreen. It is May.
Oh yeah.
So this, when you think about, going into June 21st, which is the summer solstice. So, we're 7 weeks from that, so the sun angle is very similar to what it is in, late July, early August. So
we're getting to that point where it's no longer like I need to check this. It's just be aware that every day you're likely to have a UV risk going on here as we approach the summer.
That's right, and we're approaching 8 o'clock sunsets. So here in the next day or two, those sunsets will be after 8 p.m.
Otherwise known as Janet Roach's favorite thing.
Is it?
Janet Roach, anchor extraordinaire here, loves when those sunsets get a little later, just because it's nice getting out of work. She, of course, anchors our 6 p.m. show.
Right.
And so it's nice getting out of work after the 6 p.m. show and still having a little bit of sunlight left.
Yeah, and to get home and be able to do stuff and
yeah,
walk around the neighborhood after you get off work and stuff.
Exactly right. So yeah, we're looking forward to these warmer temperatures, and Evan Stewart has told us that we should expect them this week, as well as maybe a little bit of rain. Evan, anything else we need to know?
Just the main thing is, Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Happy Cinco de Mayo, as always.
That's right. Not Mexican Independence Day. That's in September.
Right.
So it's not the same thing. It's just a nice. Yeah, it's mostly an American holiday anyway, but it is just a nice way to recognize, the, Mexican culture and what it's given to the United States and the Southwest.
100%. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Yes.
Happy Give Local 757 Day, and a happy forecast from Evan Stewart. We'll see you at 4 o'clock on 13 News Now.
I'll be there.
All right. That's Evan Stewart, everybody. We're going to take another commercial break. We've got another special guest coming up to join us here in studio when we get back. Stick around for that. welcome back to Live Impact News. Now, we're juggling a few different things at this point in time. We have a live look out in Texas. This is the K-Town Plaza in Carrollton, Texas. Officers responded this afternoon to an area that is known as the K-Town Plaza. Those officers are investigating an incident in the area of the 1500 block of West Hebron Parkway. The department was announced by the department in a social media post, and the incident remains an active scene. As you can see on your screen, there are two different things going on here. One is the police presence over by the front door of that particular building. The other is a series of microphones that have been set up in what typically is going to be a press conference, as far as we can tell. So we, sort of anxiously await that press conference to get updates on the situation. We don't have other updates that we can kind of confirm and bring to you now, other than the fact that there appears to be a second scene where the FBI and DPS agents are investigating, established around noon. So you have two different scenes here. Texas DPS confirmed to WFAA, which is our sister station in the Texas area, that they were on scene assisting the Carrollton Police Department in this investigation. So you have multiple agencies working multiple scenes when it comes to this particular incident, but we do not know a ton of details on what happened in the incident itself. So we're still watching that. But as you can see, it's sort of a commonly laid out shopping plaza. Plenty of those here in Hampton Roads. And so we'll wait and see if perhaps we can get that press conference a little later on in the stream while we wait for that to take place. Now, we also are monitoring the trial of Stephon Diggs, the NFL wide receiver, which has been on recess for a few hours now and appears as though it's ready to start up again. Diggs is back in the courtroom. Diggs charged with strangulation and misdemeanor assault and battery due to accusations from a former private chef of his, and we expect closing arguments to come at some point this afternoon. That's another thing we'll monitor. Can we take this Carrollton shot here as well, Naya? If you see a collection of FBI agents that are gathered at that plaza in Texas, that is, maybe a dozen FBI agents that appear there on your screen doing work. So that is quite the investigation. So multiple things that we're juggling here that we're going to keep an eye on as far as our live screens go. For us here in studio on Live Impact News right now, however, we actually welcome a very special guest to the program. We shift our focus to Gayleen Canoyton. Gayleen wears many hats in the Hampton Roads community, but we welcome her here today as a part of her role with the NAACP. Gayleen, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I hope you're having an all right Tuesday so far.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. Hey, right there with you, Gayleen. We are working our way there. And, I want to start by, we're going to talk mostly about the recent Supreme Court ruling that has severely hampered the Voting Rights Act of 1965. If you remember from late last week and early this week, we talked about this for our viewers here. This was due to a redistricting case out of Louisiana, worked its way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's ruling is going to, drastically change voting rights and the Voting Rights Act, a piece of landmark civil rights legislation here in this country, one of the most consequential laws in our nation's history. And the Section 2 of that Voting Rights Act will be seriously hampered by this Supreme Court ruling, which is going to, well, you know what? I will, rather than continuing to talk myself, I'll go ahead and direct the question to Gayleen. I'm sure you could explain this far better than I could, Gayleen. I want to start with the Voting Rights Act of 1965 itself, and I want to talk about why that is such an important piece of legislation and what that did for voters in the United States of America. So can we start by talking about why the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is so critical?
So first of all, I want to say, and thank you for having me on. First, I want to say that the NAACP was built on voting rights, to obtain voting rights, to make sure that everyone had a right to vote, especially people of color and Black people. It's always been disparities, it's always been voter suppression, and it's always been difficult. Laws have made it difficult for people of color to vote, especially Black people. This law, the 1965 Voter Rights Act, put in place protections to ensure that people of color and every American had a right to vote without any discrimination. And so dismantling all of this now means that gerrymandering, partisan and racial gerrymandering, it's all you can do it now. It's gone away. So you can actually states can gerrymander on racial lines. They can gerrymander on partisan lines. And so that's hurtful for everyone's right to vote, and especially people of color's right to vote. And when I say everyone, I'm talking about I'm talking about people of color, people, not only Black people, but I'm talking about folks who's always been discriminated against in the long run. And then we got to make sure that we get through this process right now because this is really bad.
And, when you think of a piece of legislation that has been in existence since 1965 and that is considered one of the landmark achievements of the civil rights movement and that has been widely celebrated for its positive impact on voting access here in the United States. I mean, you go through that resume and now you see the negative impacts that this ruling is having on that piece of legislation. All these years later, I wonder, is there an easy answer as to why this is happening now?
It's about power. The bottom line is about power. Ever since we've had this president in office, and even in 2016, you started seeing the unraveling of voting rights. And even before in 2013, it was a Shelby case, which got rid of basically pre-clearance of any state that was known for having racial discrimination before they can have policy, make laws, or even do maps. They had to have it pre-cleared to the federal government before they can put it in place. And so it started a while ago, but it really picked up speed, starting in 2016 on. So this is about power, being in control. It's sending us backwards to Jim Crow 2.0. And that's what this is all about.
We talk about going backwards, and the Associated Press had a statistic from Sherilyn Efil, who's a professor at Howard University, just to kind of showcase maybe how legislation like this, or maybe just at least show how effective it is. In 1970, there were 1,500 Black elected officials in the United States. As of today, there were more than 10,000 Black elected officials in the United States. And so that is a real tangible statistic that's able to show what sort of impact legislation like the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and others similar to it have actually had on our governing system here and representation within that system. When you talk about going backwards, I wonder, Gayleen, if I could ask, what is your biggest fear with this particular ruling when you look at the actual tangible impacts it could have on representation?
It weakens our voting power. That's basically what it is. No representation, number one, in southern states, and no representation. It weakens our voting power. It opens up for more voter suppression, to make it harder for people to vote. It's almost going back to poll tax days. I mean, this is even worse than Plessy versus Ferguson. At least that was separate but equal. But this is not even nowhere equal at all. That's gone thrown out the window. You think about Dred Scott. You think about Plessy versus Ferguson, and all of these landmark cases in the past that was overcome by having the 1965 Voting Civil Rights Act, Voting Civil Rights Act. So that's all thrown out the window now. But we have to stay encouraged. And we have to make sure that we register more people into the system, and we educate them, and we mobilize. And we're hoping that even if you have Republicans, independents who want to see fairness, who want to see fairness in this government, want to see fairness among voting for all citizens, people of color included, Black people to be included, hoping that we'll override this and then they will vote for the candidate that's for fairness and not for the candidates for the MAGA movement.
And you mentioned Plessy versus Ferguson. Just for our viewers, 1896, a Supreme Court ruling that upheld a Louisiana state law that allowed for equal but separate accommodations for white and colored races, according to archives.gov. So that, in particular, is referring to segregation. And as you said, the Voting Rights Act, one of those pieces of legislation through the civil rights movement that helped to change some of what we saw before that movement. I want to ask, and this is, I hope my framing of this question is correct, but when we see the thought of going backwards and the concept of so many of the accomplishments that came from the civil rights movement being sort of erased by some of these decisions and some other decisions that we see from the federal government, do you see a need or an opportunity even, I suppose, for what could be considered a new civil rights movement? Is that something that you think that this is the time for, just based on the fact that we see the progress of the most famous civil rights movement experiencing some impairment?
I don't think it's a new civil rights movement. I think you build on what you have, bring back the foundation of the civil rights, and then you build on it. You can't start over. You got to build on what you already have. We got to bring back, these foundations of equal rights, making sure that there's no voter suppression, making sure that everyone has a right to vote and have equal power and not have dismantling of their voting power, and making it harder for us to vote. We got to make sure that we build to make sure that we strengthen. And now we got to bring it back, but we got to strengthen it even more and make sure that this cannot happen again.
Build and strengthen. I do really appreciate that answer, and I like the reframing of that, is to build upon all that was accomplished, because there was so much that was accomplished. You mentioned three things in particular: stay encouraged, educate, mobilize. Those are three things that you mentioned in terms of what can come next in order to try and fight back against some of these rulings that we see here. I'm wondering, is there anywhere else, anything else that you would want to add onto those three bullet points for people who are sitting at home saying, well, I don't want this to have a negative impact on my life and my future. What can I do? Stay encouraged, educate, mobilize. Is there anything else that you would include there?
Yeah, voter registration. You got to have voter registration. And education is important, that we educate our families, our friends, our neighbors. We need to educate them on what this voting rights mean, what this voting rights derailment meant to our community. But we have to stay encouraged, because we have a voice and we have to use our voice. We got to take it to the streets. Now, in Virginia, we have a Voting Rights Act, and that was passed by Delegate Sia Price, and it was signed into law. And what that means is that you can sue in Virginia on certain things that was taken out of the Civil Rights Act, that was dismantled from the Civil Rights Act of 1965. However, some of the other states that don't have it is going to be severely impacted by this. Now, we will have some impact. However, we have been voting in terms of progression, progressive, being progressive, in terms of ensuring that we have equality amongst everyone. We've been fighting for all of this, and we've handled it in Virginia, especially in this past General Assembly session. A lot has been accomplished, and if you look at back in 2020. And other, we're nonpartisan, so I'm just going to say it. In Democrat-led General Assembly sessions, we've got a lot accomplished in terms of criminal justice, voting rights. We have expanded voting rights. We were like almost towards the last, like 43rd or something like that, in terms of the hardest state to vote in. And now we're like the 11th easiest state to vote in. With 45 days early vote, with same day register and vote. You have your mail-in ballots as well. So we have Sunday voting, and now we have Sunday voting. It's going to be twice a month. It's got to be signed. It's going to be signed into law, but it was passed in the General Assembly. So we got Sunday voting, and it's all going to be the same day. So we have expanded our right to vote and access in Virginia, and we just have to keep it up. But the 90 million people that stayed at home in 2024 didn't pay attention to what Project 2025 said. They clearly said, dismantling of the Voting Rights Act. That was in there, along with everything, many other things was in there as well. So we have to talk about the importance of what does this mean to you? What are you concerned about when we talk to people in the streets? What concerns you the most? Well, look, gas is now $5.09. I mean, that's how much I paid, $5.09. The food has gone up, prices has gone up. That's policy that affects you. And your strength is in your vote. That's the only way you're going to make change is in your vote. And so when we talk to folks, we got to find out what's important to them and tie it back to why it's important to vote and why your voting power is important as well.
And when you talk about your strength is in your vote, I'll add before I jump into my next question, you speak about the improvements in access in Virginia. I think that when we talk about the gubernatorial election and when we talk about this special redistricting election and the amount of participation we saw, I think it is a tangible symbol of what you're describing, which is that Virginia has taken real steps to make sure that everybody can have their voice heard. Now, when we talk about how voting is your strength and how here in the United States of America, democracy has been one of the pillars of our nation, and one of the things that globally we have been most associated with as a country. And now we see this Supreme Court decision. We see repeated questioning of the results of the 2020 election. We see the SAVE Act, which looks to change sort of how people are able to register to vote. We see this redistricting battle playing out across the United States, state to state to state, in which gerrymandering has become something that is so commonplace as to be normalized. When we see all of these different things all in this sort of 5-year stretch, do you worry about the state of our democracy in terms of that vote being our strength, continuing to be something that is actually a strength of the people and a tool of the people? I mean, do you have concerns about that when you just look at the chaos that we see within our voting system right now?
Well, first of all, we didn't ask for this fight. And the reason why we did redistricting in Virginia is to level the playing field, because this president and his legislators, they usurped the process with redistricting. They usurp normally what would happen during the census. You have your census every 10 years, and then after that, you would have your redistricting. They usurped that so that they can have more seats at the midterms, and we just couldn't sit back. We had to fight back. Normally, the NAACP couldn't get involved in an election because it's partisan. This was nonpartisan. We was able to call out disinformation because there was a lot of money was spent to turn people around, voter suppression, disinformation, all of that. So now, am I worried? I'm encouraged because we've been through this before, and we were built for this moment, and we're going to overcome this moment. And we have our young folks that are standing on our shoulders, and we have to make sure that we support them and get them out there to take the reign. I mean, and every organization that I'm in, I support young people. I try to put them in positions where they can make decisions because, we're getting older and we got to make sure we pass the baton. But right now, everybody has to fight. And that's where we are right now. So am I worried? It is what it is. We expected this to happen. And now we're just putting tactics in place. We have a midterm in November. We have a chance to make a difference across this country to change the makeup of Congress. And although it might seem a gleam the glimmer right now, there's hope. And we have to continue on with that hope. And the only hope that we have is through our vote. That's what I hope, and our voice. So everyone should always speak up to their legislators, and tell them what you're concerned about and to make sure. But in Virginia, fortunately, we've had good legislators to protect our vote, and at the same time, we have to make sure that we continue on voting to protect our vote and turn out in record numbers in November. And in other states, they have to turn out as well too. It was the NAACP that reached out to 150,000 Black voters across the Commonwealth in this last election under redistricting. We were the only ones that can say that this voter suppression, those mailers, was a lie. We were the only ones because it was, and we've seen it before, and it's only going to be worse in November. So right now we have to be able to teach our base on what voter suppression looks like. What does disinformation look like? How to tell on a mailer when it's what's true and what's not true. If it's a quote on there, look at the date underneath the quote. And then research where that quote came from. Look at who paid for it at the end of it, paid for it by, and look up that organization. We're going to have to teach the tactics, AI. We're going to have to teach voters how to tell the difference between what's true and what's a lie. Because we have 3 referendums that's going to be on the ballot in November, along with our candidates. And so we got to start now educating, registering people, and mobilizing them in Virginia and across the country. But in Virginia, we got 3. We got the voting rights amendment for automatic restoration of rights. We have marriage equality, and we have women's reproductive rights, that referendums that can go into the Constitution, that will go into the Constitution, because we're going to work very hard to make sure that these referendums pass, along with candidates that meets our agenda with the NAACP.
And this is why we love talking to Gayleen, because I present the question with a degree of fear, and you're able to kind of turn it into something that is encouraging, and you're able to point out some of the positives that we've seen in some in some participation, and just the emotional motivation that you can take from a situation like this to go and create change. So I appreciate that. I want to lend a little bit of context to what you were discussing with redistricting, right? The process of redistricting. This started when President Trump sort of publicly demanded that Republican legislators in Texas go and find him 5 more seats. They initiated that process. California then responded by going to find seats themselves to try to balance out that redistricting in Texas. And then it went state to state all the way until it reached us here in Virginia, at which point it was put in a referendum to the people. Obviously, the yes votes ended up winning that special election. Now it's working its way through the judicial system. It's something that we'll keep everybody updated on as we go through. You also mentioned that we're all getting older, and I felt that very deeply, Kayleen, and you got me with that one as well. Now, we sit
but
here
I'm a senior
today.
Millennial.
Listen, we're all millennials here. We're taking that title. We're holding on to it tight as much as we can.
That's right.
You work you're so involved with the community here in Hampton Roads, and talking to you, I can feel the passion that you have to continue this fight. I'm wondering, is that the same sentiment that you gather when you're doing your work in Hampton Roads? Do you feel a motivated electorate to go out in November and continue to push this change?
I see it. I'm also the political action chair for the NAACP Virginia State Conference. So I work across the Commonwealth. We work directly with legislation. We advocate for legislation, especially during the General Assembly session. So we do a lot. So it's not only just in Hampton Roads. Oh, but there's an energy out here. And it's not just only Black folk. It's an energy across the board of people that are angry, but we are turning anger into action. We are not going to let this defeat us. And I want to make one clarification. Actually, the usurping of the census started really in North Carolina with those 3 seats. Had that didn't happen in North Carolina, we wouldn't have had the big ugly bill. because that's really where it started. Then it went on to Texas and everywhere else, but it started in North Carolina. And so this is why this is so important. And we see the effects from the big ugly bill, and it's just been derailing ever since then. But we have to make sure that, again, register people and check your registration on a regular basis to make sure you have not been dropped from the roll. You can go to vote.org. You can call your local registrar's office. You can do all of these different things. But even if you register to vote and you think that your voter registration is fine, you don't need to check it. In this climate right now, you need to be checking your registration at least twice a month. Just check it. Just go online and make sure that you can do that. And you can register people online. People can register online if they're not registered to vote. I'm excited that Hampton University just opened up their precinct on April 21st. Norfolk State is working on that, and we have many colleges across the Commonwealth that are looking to put precincts on campus. I mean, we have college students that want to be engaged, and we want to have them have easy access. And of course, the naysayers are trying to stop that, but the students are speaking up. They're stepping up, because they want to be involved in the process.
And if you want to learn more about what Gayleen just referenced, that voter access at Hampton University, 13newsnow.com. We have a web story on that entire initiative, that entire change that they're making at the Hampton University Convocation Center, now the city's 31st voting district. Plenty of students in that story talking about how this will only help increase voter participation from college students. So, Gayleen, I really appreciate it. You even added there at the end, if people are at home and you're wondering what you can do, check your registration, encourage friends and family to check their registration, and help people get registered to vote. If you are wondering what you can do in the face of so much change, that is something where you can go and take some power back and make sure that you maintain that voice. Gayleen, is there anything else that you want to add this afternoon?
Yeah, I want volunteer. Join an organization, join an NAACP, or join an organization that are meeting your goals or what you're interested in, because we need more soldiers to help us. So volunteer, join an organization, become a precinct captain, do voter protection, or even become election officers. Go to your registrar office and say, I want to become an election officer. We need more people inside the polls as well, too. So that's very important. But the most important is stay encouraged, be hopeful. And as long as we are doing something and taking it to the streets and letting our voices be heard and let everyone, we are not going to take this sitting down. In August, it's going to be August 6th is going to be the anniversary of the 1964 Voting Rights Act. And we want to make sure that we celebrate that by raising our voices on what just happened. So we want to go to the streets. We want people to be out here saying, yes, this is what we had. This was a good thing. And where we are right now, we're going to fight. And this is the reason why we're fighting. So we have all of these different civil rights acts that was passed, and then we just have to continue on making sure that our voices are heard.
All right, Gayleen Knoyton joining us today, and the ability to uplift is greatly appreciated, Gayleen. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Gayleen Knoyton from the NAACP, and I certainly hope to speak to you again as the midterms approach and as we continue to see developments here in our democracy.
Great. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right, so 2 special guests on our live stream today. Always a pleasure to have Gayleen on. She's always been very helpful at giving us sort of insight and also showcasing what can be done around changes that we see in our voting system, which there have been quite a few here in recent months and years, including the topic that we started with today, which is that Supreme Court ruling in regards to the Louisiana redistricting case that has led to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, seeing a lot of its influence sort of diminished based on that ruling from the Supreme Court. So we'll continue to follow that story, bring updates on that story, try to gain insight into that story as we go. For the time being, we're going to take a commercial break here on Live Impact News. And when we get back, we have that live event still going on in Massachusetts, the trial of Stephon Diggs experiencing closing arguments right now. We'll head there when we get back. All right, welcome back here, Live Impact News. As you know, as you're aware, it's Give Local 757 Day. Let's check in on those numbers. 262 nonprofit organizations across the 757, and every single one of them will benefit from donations that we receive today. And how about that? $998,051. We are that close to $1 million. We got 23 minutes left in the stream. It's possible we break $1 million while we're live here. Still a little bit of work to do, but $998,000 is absolutely incredible. Just the most sincere appreciation to each and every person who has contributed to this initiative, and it's still going. It'll go throughout the day, and that QR code right there is your opportunity. If you want to scan that QR code, it'll take you right through the process. It's simple, it's easy, and it benefits charities and nonprofits that are right here in Hampton Roads. Your communities will directly benefit from any donations that you give today. That's why we think that this is as cool of an initiative as there is, and it's more topics than you can imagine. I mean, it is so many different areas that will be helped in this particular situation. I'll just go through a couple of them. I mean, food banks, homeless shelters, literacy programs, animal services, youth sports, environmental preservation, cancer research, mental health services, veterans and military family services, and so much more. As there is a barely an area that is not covered in this particular event that we are doing today. And so we completely and totally understand that not everyone is in a place to donate right now. And, we report every day on where prices are and where things stand, and so we completely understand. We appreciate you watching. We appreciate you supporting, and if you're able to donate monetarily, we appreciate that too. So thanks for being with us here on Live Impact News. Let's go ahead and listen in on another of the groups that will see direct benefits from your donations. Let's bring in the super producer, Nia Campbell, the people's producer, Nia Campbell, to speak to the people about what we're going to watch here.
All right, so this next story is a nonprofit, Dreamcatchers. This organization is serving children, adults, active duty military, and veterans across the Virginia Peninsula and the greater Hampton Roads community through equine assisted services. So we can listen to that package now.
It is therapy that comes with 4 legs and a gallop. This is Dreamcatchers, a therapeutic riding center in Toano. And today,
Mr. Greg is ready to ride.
Let's go.
Walk on.
Veterans from Central Virginia VA healthcare system are saddling up and savoring this moment that has the horsepower to improve their lives.
This program here is a mental piece for me. It's a stress reliever. It's something that I like doing, and it gets me away from home.
When we get to the light pole, we need Fiona straight first.
And they come here and they're attached to a horse. They're given a horse to bond with for the next several weeks. They learn all the ins and outs of that horse, bonding, grooming.
The veterans are participating in 10 to 12-week sessions. They get to know the horses and not just ride them, but learn how to take care of them.
So it's a real educational opportunity, and they just grow in so many different ways. We've seen the physical growth, the mental growth.
Good job, Greg.
They even tackle obstacle courses.
Proud of you.
It's one of those things where you can't just use the reins that you're holding, because you have to use your reins, your legs, your feet, your eyes, which I didn't think at first meant a lot to the program.
Well done.
Eye movement means a lot.
Put all that together, and it's therapy that goes a long way.
I come in feeling down, a little depressed, but I leave here with some excitement.
Yes! Excellent, Matt! That was awesome! That was awesome!
just one of the many, many initiatives that you'll be helping by participating in this Give Local Day 757. You know, we've kind of turned it into this marathon of coverage, and it just could not be for better causes. It could not be more directly impactful to this community right here in Hampton Roads. So we, you know, it's an honor, it's a privilege to be able to cover something that actually is directly helping the community. Now, for us, we're going to take another commercial. When we get back, as promised, we have been talking about this quite a bit over the last 2 days. We'll go back out to closing arguments in the Stephon Diggs trial in Massachusetts. That's coming up next. And we return with a brief stop inside the studio before we head out to Massachusetts for more on Stephon Diggs' case. He is on trial as we speak for strangulation and misdemeanor assault and battery, charges that he has pled not guilty to. Let's go live out to the courthouse.
You are to decide what the facts are solely from the evidence admitted in this case. In evaluating the evidence and determining the facts, keep in mind that we all tend to perceive information and form opinions based on our own personal experience and background. This tendency may cause us to hold bias, of which we may or may not be conscious. And as I previously instructed you, you must not allow bias, whether held consciously or subconsciously, to interfere with your ability to fairly evaluate the evidence, apply the law as I instruct you, or render a fair and impartial verdict based on the evidence before you. The evidence consists of the testimony of witnesses as you recall it, any documents or other things that were received into evidence as exhibits may also be considered. Of course, the quality or strength of the proof is not determined by the sheer volume of evidence or the number of witnesses. It's the weight of the evidence that is important. Some things that occurred during a trial are not evidence, and you may not consider them as evidence in deciding the facts of the case. The complaint itself is not evidence. A question put to a witness is never evidence. Only the answers are evidence. Also, you may not consider any answer that I struck from the record and told you to disregard. Do not consider such answers. Anything that you may have seen or heard when the court was not in session is not evidence. The opening statements and the closing arguments of the lawyers are not evidence. They are only intended to assist you in understanding the evidence and the contentions of the parties. If your memory of the testimony differs from the attorney's, You are to follow your own recollection. You should not consider anything I have said or done during the trial as any indication of my opinion as to what your verdicts should be. In evaluating a witness's testimony, you have to decide what testimony to believe and how much weight to give that testimony. You should give the testimony of a witness whatever degree of belief and importance that you judge it is fairly entitled to receive. You are the sole judges of the credibility of a witness. You may believe everything a witness says, part of it, or none of it. If there are any conflicts, discrepancies, or inconsistencies in the testimony, you should examine them carefully. You may consider whether a witness was candid or guarded, responsive or evasive, and whether the testimony is reasonable or unreasonable, probable or improbable. You may take into account how good an opportunity a witness had to observe the facts about which the witness testifies and whether the testimony seems accurate. You may also consider evidence, if any, about a witness's motive for testifying, whether a witness displays any bias in testifying, and whether or not a witness has any interest in the outcome of the case. In deciding whether to believe a witness and how much importance to give a witness's testimony, you must look at all the evidence, drawing on your own common sense, life experience, and good judgment. Consider the evidence as a whole. Do not make up your mind about what the verdict should be until after you have gone to the jury room to decide the case and you and your fellow jurors have discussed the evidence. Keep an open mind until then. Once you have determined the facts, apply the law as I explain it to you to the facts in order to decide the verdicts. Now, there are two types of evidence which you may use to determine the facts of a case: direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. You have direct evidence where a witness testifies directly about the fact that is to be proved based on what he claims to have seen or heard or felt with their own senses, and the only question is whether you believe the witness. You have circumstantial evidence where the witness cannot testify directly about the fact that is to be proved, but you are presented with evidence of other facts, and you are then asked to draw reasonable inferences from them about the fact which is to be proved. Let me give you an example. Your daughter might tell you one morning she sees the mail carrier mailbox. That's direct evidence that the mail carrier has been to your mailbox. On the other hand, she might tell you only that she sees mail in the mailbox. That's circumstantial evidence that the mail carrier has been there. No one's seen the mail carrier, but you can reasonably infer that the mail carrier has been there since there is mail in the box. The law allows either type of proof in a criminal trial. There are two things to keep in mind about circumstantial evidence. The first one is that you may draw inferences and conclusions only from facts that have been proved to you. The second rule is that any inference or conclusion which you draw must be reasonable and natural based on your common sense and experience of life. If the Commonwealth's case is based solely on circumstantial evidence, you may find the defendant guilty only if those circumstances are conclusive enough to leave you with a moral certainty, a clear and settled belief that the defendant is guilty, and that there is no other reasonable explanation of the facts as proven. The evidence must not only be consistent with the defendant's guilt, it must be inconsistent with his innocence. Whether the evidence is direct or circumstantial, the Commonwealth must prove the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt from all the evidence in the case. Now, when you consider whether to believe a witness or how much weight to give their testimony, you may consider whether that witness said or wrote something earlier that differs in any significant way from their present testimony in the courtroom. It is for you to say whether there is a difference and how significant any difference is. Please note that you may not use the witness's earlier statement as proof that something said in it is true. So, for example, if a witness testified here that she found a donut, but had earlier written that they'd found a bagel, that earlier statement would not prove they found a bagel, but it might raise doubt as to whether they were accurate or truthful when they testified that they had found a donut. So the earlier statement is brought to your attention for the sole purpose of discrediting or casting doubt on the accuracy of the witness's present testimony here at the trial. It's for you to decide whether it does so. Normally, you may not consider any statement that a witness made in the past which is similar to that witness's testimony at trial. The rule rests in part on our common experience that saying something repeatedly doesn't necessarily make it any more or less true. But we make an exception to that rule where there has been a suggestion that a witness may have recently contrived their testimony. In determining how reliable a witness is who has been accused of recently inventing their testimony, you may consider any earlier statements that the witness made which are consistent with their present testimony. It's for you to say how important the consistency is depending on depending on when any earlier statement was made and any other circumstances that you consider significant. The earlier statement is not itself evidence of any fact that is mentioned in it. To repeat, if there has been a suggestion that a witness recently contrived their testimony at trial, when you evaluate that claim, you may also take into account any earlier statement the witness made which is consistent with their present testimony. The prior statement is relevant only as to the witness's credibility, and you may not take it as proof of any fact contained in it. At this trial, you may have noticed that the defendant did not testify. The defendant has an absolute right not to testify, since the entire burden of proof, in this case, is on the Commonwealth to prove that the defendant is guilty. It is not up to the defendant to prove that he is innocent. The fact that the defendant did not testify has nothing to do with the question of whether he is guilty or not guilty. You are not to draw any adverse inference against the defendant because he did not testify. You are not to consider it in any way or even discuss it in your deliberations. You must determine whether the Commonwealth has proved its case against the defendant based solely on the testimony of the witnesses and the exhibits. As I have told you, the complaint against the defendant is only an accusation. It is not evidence. The defendant has denied that he is guilty of the crimes charged in the complaint. The law presumes the defendant to be innocent of the charges against him. The presumption of innocence is a rule of law that compels you to find the defendant not guilty unless and until the Commonwealth produces evidence from whatever source that proves that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. This burden of proof never shifts. The defendant is not required to call any witnesses or produce any evidence since he is presumed to be innocent. The presumption of innocence stays with the defendant unless and until the evidence convinces you unanimously as a jury that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. It requires you to find the defendant not guilty unless his guilt has been proved beyond a reasonable doubt. Your verdict, whether it is guilty or not guilty, must be unanimous. Now, as I've said, the burden is on the Commonwealth to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of the charges made against him. What is proof beyond a reasonable doubt? The term is often used and probably pretty well understood, though it is not easily defined. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean proof beyond all possible doubt. For everything in the lives of human beings is open to some possible or imaginary doubt. A charge is proved beyond a reasonable doubt if after you have compared and considered all of the evidence, you have in your minds an abiding conviction to a moral certainty that the charge is true. When we refer to moral certainty, we mean the highest degree of certainty possible in matters relating to human affairs based solely on the evidence that has been put before you in this case. I have told you that every person is presumed to be innocent until they are proved guilty, and that the burden of proof is on the prosecutor. If you evaluate all the evidence and you still have a reasonable doubt remaining, the defendant is entitled to the benefit of that doubt and must be acquitted. It is not enough for the Commonwealth to establish a probability, even a strong probability, that the defendant is more likely to be guilty than not guilty. That is not enough. Instead, the evidence must convince you of the defendant's guilt to a reasonable and moral certainty, a certainty that convinces your understanding and satisfies your reason and judgment as jurors who are sworn to act conscientiously on the evidence. That is what we mean by proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The defendant is charged with having committed an assault and battery upon Mila Adams. In order to prove the defendant guilty of committing an intentional assault and battery, the Commonwealth must prove three things beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that the defendant touched the person of Mila Adams. Second, that the defendant intended to touch Mila Adams. And third, that the touching was either likely to cause bodily harm to Mila Adams or was offensive. To prove the first element, the Commonwealth must prove the defendant touched Mila Adams. A touching is any physical contact, however slight. A touching may be direct, as when a person strikes another, or it may be indirect, as when a person sets in motion some force or instrumentality that strikes another. To prove the second element, the Commonwealth must prove that the defendant intended to touch Mila Adams, in the sense that the defendant consciously and deliberately intended the touching to occur, and that the touching was not merely accidental or negligent. The Commonwealth is not required to prove that the defendant specifically intended to cause injury to Mila Adams. To prove the third element, the Commonwealth must prove that the touching was either likely to cause bodily harm to Mila Adams or was offensive.
Okay, so judge apparently talking to jury right now, giving instructions. We'll have more on that next time on Live Impact News. That does it for us this afternoon. Hope to see everybody tomorrow. Don't forget, give Local 757 all day today.